This is a fantaisie glacée au poire. It's a French kind of ice cream pie featuring pears and bananas poached in wine on a meringue nut throne. It's the grand finale for a sit-down dinner today on the French Chef.
The French Chef is made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation.
Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. You know, the great thing about this dessert, besides how it looks and eats, is that you can get all the cooking parts done way ahead. This base is made out of a meringue nut. It's a meringue nut shell, this lovely pale golden thing. And this you can make weeks, even months ahead and store in the freezer. And the fruit, these are actually pears and bananas, which are poached in wine, and these you can poach as much as 5 or 6 days ahead. And they're resting on an ice cream base. And that, of course, you can have in the freezer. So that when you have to assemble the dessert, it just takes a minute or two. And we're going to do this whole thing, and we're going to start out with the fruit. And the fruit is poached in a sugar syrup. And the sugar syrup is simply liquid and sugar. And you can use white wine, red wine, or just plain water. And we're going to use both red wine and white wine, no water. And the proportions for poaching this kind of fruit are always the same. It's 2 cups of liquid, in this case red wine, about half a bottle, and 3/4 cup of sugar. So whatever liquid you're using, just remember 3/4 cup of sugar for every 2 cups of liquid. And then we want to have some zest of lemon. And the zest of lemon is just the yellow part of the peel. And what you want to do is to let this liquid simmer very gently for about 4 or 5 minutes. You want to get the sugar melted. And then you also want the flavor of the lemon peel, and then it's going to have lemon juice. The juice of half a lemon, that's about 2 tablespoons. And it's going to also have a stick of cinnamon. And you want to make sure that the sugar there has dissolved, and then just let it simmer very, very slowly for 5 minutes to get the flavor out of the cinnamon stick and the lemon zest. And if your red, it should be a good, healthy red wine. I'm using a Macon, or you could use a Pinot or even a Chianti, but just taste it. If it's good and healthy, it's the good kind of wine to use. White wine, exactly the same. So this could be either white wine or water. And half a bottle of white wine, or 2 cups of water. And we have again the cinnamon, 1 stick of cinnamon, and lemon zest. And we don't put the lemon peel in. I'm not going to put all the zest in. That vegetable peeler is going off. But instead of lemon juice for white wine, have a tablespoon of vanilla. And then again, we have the 3/4 cup of sugar. And if you're using water, you make a very nice poaching, say, of apples, of just water, vanilla, lemon zest, and cinnamon. That goes particularly well for apples. I'm going to put that off just a little bit. You can use a vanilla bean, but I think a teaspoon of vanilla extract is much easier. And now we're going to do some pears, which are going to be done in red wine. And they get cut in half, And take off the peel. And then we're going to take off the core. And you can use any pears that are in season, like Bartlett in the fall and summer. In the winter, Bosque, Comise, whatever is a nice pear that's firm, ripe. And then take out the core. Then after you have done the pears, you want to be sure and keep them in acidulated water, just the way we did for the artichoke hearts. That means 1 quart of water and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice for every quart. There they are. And that keeps them from darkening, though of course if you're going to do them into, not going to finish that pear, so I'll keep it in the lemoned water. If you're going to do the pears in red wine, if they've darkened a little bit, it doesn't make too much difference. You know that pears don't ripen on the tree. They're always picked at a certain stage, I guess when the specific gravity is right, and then they're stored. They can be stored for several weeks in a cool place, and when you want to ripen them, you have to bring them to room temperature at about, say, 65 to 70 degrees, and they should be humid. So if you're a store, you have a humid room, and if you're at home, here's your pear ripening system. A plastic bag, a damp paper towel to keep things humid, and then just put the pears in the bag, and they usually take 2 or 3 days to ripen. Then you take them out, and you very carefully feel them very gently up at the stem end and then at the large end. And then as soon as they're ripe, you refrigerate them. And if it happens that you've over-ripened them, what you can do is to not over-ripen them, but if you think that they're all ripe and you're not going to be able to eat them, you can poach them, because poaching preserves them. Now here go the pears into the red wine syrup, and they're to come just up barely to the simmer and then be maintained at just below the simmer for about 6 to 8 to 9 minutes until they're just tender. And don't let them really simmer or bubble, because if they do, that'll break them apart. And another useful thing for cooking pears this way is that if they're not quite ripe, you can poach them in a sugar syrup, and then they'll be edible. Now, bananas we're going to do. And they're going to go into the white wine. So they get peeled. And then I'm going to cut these into halves and quarters. It's often hard to get bananas really unblemished. But be very careful when you cut them. I'm cutting them lengthwise. But be very careful when you do so that you don't split them. Because if you split the banana, you've had it, because it just remains split. Funny, I never had done poaching of bananas before, but it's awfully good if you're going to make a banana pudding or ice cream or tart. If they're poached in white wine first, they're very good. And with both of these, let's see, these are almost at the simmer, so I'm going to move the pears down a little bit. And be very, very careful with the bananas that they don't simmer, because they come apart very quickly. 2 or 3 minutes is just about enough. And when they're done, I'll show you how they look. See, they've remained whole, but they're just a knife will just pierce them. And then you let them sit in the cooking liquid for at least 20 minutes, so that it will pick up the flavor of the wine and everything else in it. And then you refrigerate them, and they really will keep for 4 or 5 days. And with the pears, when they're done, I'm going to show you them. Again, as you see, they've picked up the color of the wine. Again, they're tender when you can just pierce them easily with the knife. And they pick up more purple color the longer they stay in the wine. But with them also, be sure, or with any fruit, be sure that you leave it to cool in the syrup at least 20 minutes or longer. And you can poach any fruit this way, from apples and apricots and peaches to passion fruit and probably persimmons. But for apricots and peaches, you don't peel them until after they're poached and cooled in their syrup. You peel them while they're still warm. And then if you serve these just as they are with their syrup, which is absolutely delicious, it's called a compote or compote de fruits. But if you want to use them decoratively on a tart or on an ice cream pie, you want a glaze, which is going to make them glitter. And to make the glaze, you take about a cup or so of the poaching liquid and pour it into a pan, and then put in half a cup to a cup of red currant jelly. And then you boil that down until it's become thick and syrupy, just like this. See, that's a thick, syrupy, really rather like a melted jelly. It's just like apricot glaze. And actually, that's exactly what you do for any of the white wine. This is the white wine one that's made out of the banana cooking. So with the red wine, you use currant jelly, and with the white wine, you use apricot preserves. And you can make this way ahead and put it in a jar, and then just before using it, you have to heat it until it is liquid like this. So all of this that you can do way ahead, which is very nice to know. But I think that you'll find this poached fruit is awfully good. If you haven't tried it with pears, it's quite a different affair than just plain ordinary canned pears. And apples are lovely with it. And you can make a mixture of all kinds of fruit depending on what the season is. So now that we've taken care of the fruit business, we can take care of the rest of our cooking part, which is the meringue nut base, which is here. And I'll show you what the consistency is in just a moment. I'm going to start this out. We've done so many egg whites, I'm not going to go into a great talk about it, except to have them at room temperature and to start them slowly until they begin to foam up. And this you can do way ahead of time, and you can freeze. And what it's also is, this is called a fond or foundation, F-O-N-D-S in French, fond parisien or Parisian foundation. And it's used to make all kinds of marvelous layer cakes like dacquoises and whatnot. And as always, whenever you're doing anything like this, you have your usual preliminaries. The oven gets heated to 250 degrees, and then we have a baking sheet. This is a no-stick baking sheet that's been smeared with butter and then floured, and the extra flour knocked off. And just to make things easier for yourself, make a mark on it. We want about a 9-inch shell, so this is 9-inch across, a bowl, and just lay it in the sheet and go swishing around to make a circular mark. And that will guide you as you're making your shell. So all of that you can do ahead of time. I mean, you must do ahead of time. Now we have the egg whites, which have foamed up. And as always, they have a little bit of cream of tartar, a scant 1/4 teaspoon, which helps them keep their beating strength, and then a tiny little bit of salt. And then gradually increase the speed to fast until we have soft peaks. And you can see how that's beating there. That's almost soft peaks. I'm going to see. That's very, very soft there. And at this point, we now want to beat in 2 tablespoons of sugar. And that's going to keep the meringue up. That helps make it a little bit stiffer. And then we want some vanilla, about a teaspoon of vanilla, and then a little bit of about 2 or 3 drops of almond extract. We have in here 3 egg whites. That's a scant ½ cup. And then while that's beating, here's the rest that we have, which are nuts. This is 3/4 cup of nuts, half of it ground almonds and half of it either ground pecans or filberts, which are hazelnuts. Now that's just about it. Woo! I'm gonna go a little bit more. We want stiff peaks. That's just about right. You can see how that's holding itself up there. So they're done. You certainly, I think, find that adding the cream of tartar makes a great deal of difference. So there, look at their consistency. That's just right. They're beautiful, beautiful and shiny and just exactly the right consistency. Now we want to have 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And this, I think, makes the meringue a little more tender. So there's 1 tablespoon. It has to be sifted in, because if you don't sift it in, there might be some little lumps, and you don't want no lumps in this, even if they're going to be, the nuts are going to be a little lumpy. And now we have half a cup of regular sugar and this 3/4 cup of minced nuts that get folded in a bit at a time. This is exactly the same folding as we've always done. Then in goes a little bit of the sugar. And as always, the idea is deflating the eggs as little as possible. I've tried this with using instant sugar, and I really don't think I like, that instant superfine sugar, and I don't like it as well. It seems to me that it doesn't hold up, that it gets a little soft using it. Now rapidly in go the rest. I'm doing this a little faster probably than I should, but I want you to see the whole thing. The idea is keeping it up so that things don't collapse. And now this goes on to onto your circle. Now you can pipe this into a circle using a pastry bag, but I don't see any reason for it when the whole thing's going to be covered up with pears and ice cream. Nobody's going to see. So spread this out. I usually go a little bit beyond my mark. And remember, with the meringue, it's going to come out of the oven in exactly the same state that it went in. And push a little bit of an edge so that when you put your pears around, they're going to have something to sit on. That's about, there's a raised edge all the way around. And then I'm going to trim it around the outside. And if you're making this for a kind of a layer cake, you'd make it, with this amount, you'd have 6 egg whites, and you'd make double the proportions and make 3 layers like this. And now this goes into a 250-degree oven in the lower middle. And it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to bake. The last one I did, one took an hour and 3/4, and the other one took 2 hours. And when it's ready, it's only ready when it's ready. This is about, say, 1/2 inch thick probably, so that's, I think it depends on the thickness, how long they take to bake. But I want to show you, what can the right way to do things and the wrong way. Now this is ready when you can take a spatula and just very gently go under it, and you can see, it's going to lift up. But if it's not going to lift up, you can't force it, because if you do force it, this can happen. You'll just bust it. Then I foolishly busted, and then I ate the piece of it, so there isn't any way of fixing it again. But you could grind that up and use it as a pralin. So in other words, don't hurry it, because it's only going to come off when it's ready to. And now, after your shell is ready, you can then glaze it ahead of time, which means using this glaze from the red wine and just painting the glaze all over it. And if you do one of these shells ahead of time, find something that will hold it carefully so that you're not going to break it, because they're very fragile. I'm not going to glaze the whole thing. I just wanted to show how you went about it. I'll show you how it looks when it's done. There, completely glazed, and you want to let it set for 2 or 3 minutes. And it sets, and this is a waterproofing. And you can do this way ahead of time, and you want to let it set, and it's waterproofed. And then you unmold ice cream upon it, and then you put that in the freezer. And if you have very hard ice cream, you take it out between courses so that it softens a little bit, which I've done here. And then you're ready to assemble your dessert. And this would be after your main course. You've cleared off the table, and you just need about 2 minutes to assemble. And here is the fruit, which has been glazed. That you can do ahead, a good hour ahead of time. A few things out of the way here. I also have some whipped cream. And I think when you're giving a dinner party, don't pretend that there isn't any kitchen, that everything comes out like magic. Your guests don't mind waiting at all if they know it's going to be something delicious. Now the fruit has been glazed, and the way you do it is this way. Here's the red glaze. You pour it over the pears, and I find that you usually need about 2 glazes. Glaze it and let it set in the refrigerator for 20 minutes or half an hour, and then give it another glaze. And then you get a real glitter, which makes it look very professional. And do the same with the bananas with their yellow glaze. Actually, I find that the apricot sticks better onto things than the currant jelly, so I always put a little bit of currant jelly in with a little bit of apricot in with the currant, because I think it just makes a better glaze. And then you lay a pear. We're going to have 6 pears. And you can see now why you want this shelf. Because the pear sits upon it. We're having 6 people, so we'll just have 6 pears. I'm going to have some whipped cream on the top. So if there are any little dribbles, it's not going to make any difference at all. But you see that if you didn't have your little shelf, you'd have a rather difficult time getting those pears to sit where they should. Now, bananas. One pear that has slid off there. It's very slippery, but that's all right. I'm going to have some whipped cream. The whipped cream is rather like parsley. If anything happens, you can cover it up with whipped cream. There. One more banana on this far end. Then whipped cream, and that also you can do ahead. And make a good googly goog around the top. Choop, 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 choo. And then little you know, an awful lot of people buy that store-bought whipped cream and then they forget how delicious the real stuff is. I think that's the difference about having real home-cooked food and well, other food. It just makes an enormous amount of difference. And particularly your own homemade ice cream as well, the do-it-yourself syndrome. There we are, the dessert. And I think if you're going to have a splendid dessert and a splendid dinner, you should certainly have a dessert wine, either a sweet sauterne or a sparkling Vouvray or a champagne. And I want you to see this special kind of a cork. This is, if you're, say, a woman and you don't dare open the champagne by yourself, you can open it in the kitchen, and then here's a special cork that comes from France. It goes on the bottle, and then you push it down, and it clicks in place. This was given to me by James Beard, and who was a great champagne lover. And it really works very nicely. And then we'll just have a bit of champagne. And these are special champagne glasses with hollow stems. I'm just giving, this is really just a run through, because of course I'm just pouring you the champagne out of the kindness of my heart, just for fun too. Another good wine, I think, is a sparkling Vouvray, which is very little used and is less expensive and very good. So this is certainly a grand finale to a sit-down dinner that started with fond d'artichaut farci béarnaise, and with the main course of a filet de boeuf sauce Périgueux, and ending with a fantaisie glacée aux poires et aux bananes. That's a really bang-up dinner. So, that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appétit.
The French Chef has been made possible by a grant from the Polaroid Corporation. Julia Child is co-author of Mastering the Art of French Cooking, Volumes 1 and 2.